All right, welcome to episode, call it 100, just thinking
or 13.
Or 13 of Pulling Back the Curtain. We have Tim Mitrovich, normally the host, right now the guest. We're going to switch things up a little bit and pull back the curtain and talk to you, Tim 10 Capital CEO. Everybody knows that.
I didn't name it 10 Capital because it sounded like my name. I've been accused of that, mostly by my own colleagues, but that's not true. But it is a tongue twister.
I can see Tim at
10. Tim at 10.
I like it. So tell me about the name 10 Capital. First of all, I know you've told the story before, but why was that the name?
Kind of twofold. One was to honor my grandfather, so it was based off his jersey number. But then kind of along those lines, it was a football jersey number, and there's so many different places that are named after the founder, and I always find it a bit ironic that they talk about being a team, and yet the name of they name it after themselves. And so, not to disparage everybody who might have done that, but to me it just made sense that if I was going to talk about us being a unique firm, a true team-based firm, that the name should reflect that. And so, again, both as a way of honoring my grandpa, but at the same time, the tie-in to a team sport, which is where the jersey came from, it just made a lot of sense that we'd go with that. So,
that's great. Well, yeah. What sport?
Football.
Yeah. Football is your sport too, right?
My clan didn't know anything better than running into people, so that's what we did for most of our youth. Yep.
What position did you play?
I played quarterback. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah, uncle had played quarterback. Grandpa was a quarterback, but back when he played in the 30s, early 40s, the quarterback really just turned around and pitched it. So I didn't do a lot of throwing. It was more of a lead blocker position than it was the glamour position it's turned into. But
all right. Yeah. So if you were to compare yourself to any current NFL quarterback,
well, it would be a horrible analogy given my talent level and theirs, but yeah, I guess Drew Brees, in the sense that we're both undersized relative to how I'm at 6'1". I think he's right around 6 feet, and no more for your ability to outsmart people than overpower them with your physical capabilities. So I'll use that as my comparison.
And hopefully, he's playing this weekend, so maybe that might be relevant by the time
this podcast
comes out. He's a good dude. I'm
not going to go so far as to say I'm as good a guy as he seems like a great guy. So
totally,
I certainly a good role model for anybody.
So how do you think, I want to talk about Tim, the CEO, but how do you think football, then we'll talk about more about life, how do you think football molded you into a CEO or the leadership that it takes to build a company like you built?
I find myself using analogies all the time, so I got to think each of those analogies in their own way. I'll try to rattle through them. I think number one, when you're a quarterback, you just got to get used to the fact that your mistakes are going to be more amplified, and that you're going to get blamed for a lot of things when they don't go right. That you don't get to come off the field even if your guy missed the block and blame your lineman. If the receiver drops the pass, it's your completion percentage that suffers. It's not there. There's no such thing as a catch percentage, and that's okay. I think the ability to, again, make mistakes and yet still win, just as a concept, is something so many people get so petrified of a loss or a mistake. And they're never fun. Throwing a pick never got easier, or never got easy, I should say. But not coming off and being so dejected, your whole team lost confidence and the ability to continue on, I think was critical. And so I think that's a big one. I know I use it even when it comes to portfolio management and design, in the sense that, of course the scoreboard matters at the end of the game. Of course the balance on your monthly statement matters, but it's not how you win the game, right? You have to have a playbook. Your playbook you don't abandon your playbook just because you're ahead or behind. You need to understand what's core to you. You do need to understand how to adapt and change, and maybe even change for the circumstances of the game or what the scoreboard's reading, but probably far less than people realize, right? Most of the time it isn't changing your plays or even using different plays. It's the amount of focus and attention you put into the task at hand, and that ability to hold back from just abandoning the game plan that you came in with, that can help determine whether you could dig out of a hole, for example. So, and then ultimately, as well, the importance of teammates, that so many times people, and we had a couple colleagues in here a minute ago, I don't know if that podcast will come out before or after this, but they get hung up on who's smarter, who's better, who could do this, who could do that, without, it's just not a conversation that for the most part, certainly in any healthy team, transpires. Like a left tackle isn't pretending to be a quarterback's not pretending to be a left tackle, or a running back to a receiver, or vice versa. They understand that they need to be the best at their position, and they need to trust their teammates. And the investment industry, for the most part, particularly again is in our field where it's retail based, it tends to be around some rock star personality that is good at gathering assets and facing up a firm, and they build an ecosystem that feeds up into them. And that's never been who we are. And I think the talent we have here reflects that nobody wants to be part of a fake team. They want to be part of a real team. And so anyway,
right.
That's a lot, but that's in a lot of ways, I guess it's impacted me.
So if you were to, let's take football out of it, what else has helped you get the skills to be a CEO, to develop, the company to where it is now? Because, for all intents and purposes, 10 Capital is, one of the most successful investment wealth management firms in the area. It's there's so many good things to say about it. How did you get it there?
I'd say that I'm very proud and aware of our growth and the feedback that we get, and yet it's never the first thing on my mind in the morning. Like, it's my first thing is always just like, what do we have to improve? How do we have to get there? And I think along with that, that's always just been my personality. There's never been confidence in the sense that I was willing to take challenges on, but never arrogance in the sense that I wouldn't listen to people. And so I guess that's the first thing I would point to, as if I have one trait, it's not that I was so innately special at any one thing. It's that I was willing to listen to people who were and learn from them and grow. And it's been a ride. It probably looks a little better from the outside than it's been inside at times, just in terms of the bumps and bruises that I think are an inevitable part of the start of anything. But yeah, just listening. I've always surrounded myself and continue to do so perpetually with mentors, people who I felt had my best interests at heart, who had talents or insights in an area that whether I did or didn't, like, that they could add something to maybe what I was doing, and then being willing to listen and incorporate.
Do you read a lot of books?
I read a lot of books.
What's your top 3?
Right now?
Like all time.
One of them I think that I read recently that I would have to put in my top 3, I think I have them, would be Triggers, no particular order here. You could call it a self-help book if you want to, but with an honorary mention to Thinking Fast and Slow. But I really like Triggers, and the whole point there was just, how innately stubborn and habitual we all are, that change as an adult is a very difficult thing, is a concept, number one, and how you can map and measure that to actually make improvements. To that first point, I wake up every day, that's my first thought, is how do I get better, not about how great I may be. A second part to that book that I think is critically important is just understanding that going through life with a mindset, this is, I think, critical to our job, that things are just going to go your way, which, again, no one would consciously say, but I think subconsciously, and this is the author's point, we wake up every day like, okay, this is my schedule, my plan. The first time your car doesn't start, you freak out, right? The first time you're going to be late to a meeting because there's a car, you freak out. The first time a meeting runs late and you're late to your next one, it can derail a lot of people, mm-hmm. right? Or at least can create a lot of angst. And the author's part is, you're going to be in a much healthier place when A, you plan with a little room, but B, just you come into the day understanding it's not going to go to script, right? As a conscious thought to start your day. So that's a great book. Second one, I think, again, as much as a concept is for the particulars of the book was Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World, which really talks about, for all the stories we may know of him, most of which are attributable to Voltaire, that they may not accurately reflect what he meant to humanity. I'm not saying he should be up there with Mother Teresa and Gandhi. Clearly that's not the case, but he had a chapter to learn. And I think that's critically important, particularly in today's world where you don't have to like everything about somebody or everything that they're doing to maybe learn from them. And then the third book would be The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt, which is a book written by Edmund Morris. And he's one of he along with Winston Churchill are probably two of my political heroes. And again, I think interesting history buff, love political history in particular, so that's why I enjoy that, but plenty to learn about his level of detail and attention and courage and finding his own path. Here's a guy who obviously grew up in a prominent family and one of wealth and means, and yet headed west and chased bears and in the midst of battle went to war. Wasn't a guy who looked for a escape from difficulty, but rather quite literally charged into it, and even up a hill, famously leading his troops at great peril to himself. And then, of course, struck that balance, not tout myself too much, but as a guy who, again, comes from a pretty mixed political family who understood the importance of national pride and all the wonderful things that America could be for itself and for the world. And at the same time, he was the guy that busted up a lot of monopolies and was there for the working man. And as he was, famously riding back in the train to take swear in as the president upon the as vice president upon the death of the president, saw the different people working in the mines and struggling and wanted to improve their station in life. So obviously a guy like that we could use these days. So anyway, those are my three books that jump off, but yeah, I could talk about books. Could be a few podcasts, so
we'll limit it to 3.
Yeah.
What hurdles have you personally faced in getting here, specifically like in the 10 capital journey? We won't talk pre-10 capital.
No pre-10 capital.
We'll talk pre-capital.
I think it would be a disservice, at least when I talk to the interns and you see the eyes light up, or I'll go speak at colleges and you see the eyes light up. It's not something I talk about a lot with clients, but yeah, I think it's easy. I come from a great family, not necessarily a family of means, but great parents, great grandparents, aunts, uncles, friends that, I have no excuse from a quality people pouring into my life perspective. I didn't know that people who didn't come from families in wealth management didn't get into wealth management. I was too stupid, stubborn, or oblivious. And then, when I got in, I left a career where I made well into the 6 figures to come back and make next to nothing. Built up my practice, not using a whole lot of commission-based product, but biting the bullet and trying to do it the right way from day one. Went through, a pretty difficult divorce. The market crashes. And so let's just say, whether it's financially, emotionally, career-wise, pretty destitute. And just didn't give up. Use that as, bleak as it was, and I don't want to undersell it, I had been attempting to evolve and create something new before then. Rather than quit, it went into hyperdrive in terms of really working on creating what would, again, become 10 Capital, a message and an experience that would be unique. And it was out of those quite literal ashes of any number of those things, the market, marriage, or my career up into that point, that I came up with a methodology that I got some of my colleagues at my old firm to embrace and see the merit of, and then from that could spawn into this firm. And so I think, at least a lot of people, when I tell them that story, they're surprised. They just think, hey, things probably went pretty smoothly for you. You went from being in a pretty good family to graduating the top of your various classes to getting into this business. Now you have, and they assume everything just kind of stayed on this nice calm trajectory. They miss some pretty, big risks in terms of walking away from a good career to sticking with it through some both professional and personal pretty trying times. Once we get into the 10 cap thing, I think it's just patience. You're legit, that you've got something unique, still feel this way, and yet a lot of people are still, they give you the wait and see, or it seems too good to be true. This is what we've told from clients until they've come on board. And we genuinely do what we do because we want to help people, and people are rightly cynical of our industry. And that can be frustrating, but kind of, whether any of those stories of patience and perseverance before, it's what we employ today to keep after it and keep trying to improve. There's no sense of arrival in the slightest.
So what attracted you to wealth management? Because that's not what you were doing before. That's not where you're.
Yeah, I got started pretty early. I was at a firm working at it through the summers in college from the time I was 18. What it attracted to me, the initial introduction was just, I'm curious. I think there's a reason they make videos about Wall Street. There's a glitz or glamour appeal to it. It's far from the reality of what things look like. But for me, when I got into it, I was a guy who it made sense out of my seemingly otherwise nonsensical world. And what I mean by that is I'm in college and I've been told, hey, you're pretty good at math and science, so you're going to be a doctor. And so I go to school at Carroll and I'm starting down the pre-med track. And I think it was years after the fact, but Chris Rock had a bit where he just said something, just because you can do something doesn't mean it should be done. I didn't have that pithy quote to use, but that was kind of it. It's like, I can do the math and I can take the test, but I don't feel like there's a passion here. And I started getting into sociology and psychology and political science and all these different areas, and I felt very scattered in the sense that I loved all of them. I still did a lot of math and a lot of science, but I loved the social sciences as well. And what did that mean? And then I got into this, particularly as 10 Capitals come, because it's not just, we're not sitting around running a hedge fund and never interacting with anyone. It's that blend between money management and into the wealth management, which is the intersection with people's lives, and how do you communicate that effectively and relate to them and understand the different drivers, good and bad, that are within them that might stand in the way of their success, or need to be opened up to have them be successful. And so, again, in ways I've certainly unpacked over the years, but that made sense that's markets, right? They have a psychological element to them. They certainly, because it's people, have a sociological element to them, or a mob mentality at times. At the same time, it takes a lot of math and acumen on that front to be able to understand some of the analysis that needs to be done. And so this afforded me the ability to bring all those interests and passions together. And now go, again, team with people who they may like to drill 1,000 feet deep on any one of those, where if I have a gift or purpose, it's the fact that I'm relatively conversant, if not fluent, in a lot of them, and can help pull those together into a singular deliverable experience for clients.
Like that. So I got to ask this, me being new in the entrepreneurship route and building a business, and knowing a lot of people that are listening are either those interns or those people that are students that are listening, or maybe someone that's doing something that they wish they were doing something else. One, what was the trigger that made you decide, no, I'm going to do this and take that jump? And then at what point in that process did the imposter syndrome go away? Or is it still there?
I think I know what you mean by imposter syndrome. Things to know what made me make the jump. I think the biggest thing to know, again, is just the length of time. I mean, it's kind of to my point. Had a grad come in, his dad knows the firm, and he came in, he sat in the office, and some common friends, so I think he might have known one or two things about me, and he's like, what I want to do what you do. I want this. He kind of looked around, and I think it's really easy to look at, to think you understand what someone's life is, right? It's never quite as easy as it probably appears. But I think, when I looked at it, he seemed to be looking at a lot of material things, people kind of gloss over the fact that they're 22, if we're talking about the younger crowd, and you're 42, and that there were 20 years of none of what they might see today. And that for whatever they think they see that they think is so nice or fun or glamorous, there's a lot of work and stress and struggle and continue on a continual basis to maintain. And that can easily get glossed over, both the time factor and or the struggle factor in an Instagram type world. Not that I try to promote that about myself. In terms of what made me make the jump, I think it's just, it was really, really hard. I think it's important to point out that I had a lot of friends and family who told me, like, quit being a coward and do it. Because it's always scary. Anybody that says otherwise is either completely naive about what it was going to be or lying after the fact. I think for me, it was just the chance. The why I wanted to do it just became more powerful than the fear. The fear of failure was no longer as big as, what I would have to live with myself to have never have tried. Didn't make it easy, and then you have to have a purpose. I think there's a lot of people who want to have a business just because they want to have a business. To me, I looked at it and I said, this is a really personal thing we're doing for people. And everybody's so impersonal about how they do it. And so now I think people look at it, and we're not the first one to do a client appreciation event, but how we message, how we communicate, how we throw events, the style, the manner, the mix, certainly of which has evolved in its own right since we started. That's different. I think it's different because, at least locally here, when you talk about like, if you said a financial firm that throws event 10 Capital, we're not the only ones that do it. I just think we do it better, and not just because the party in and of itself is better, but the purpose behind it in terms of people now 7 years into this realize that it's not a sales line or sales pitch or, smoke and mirrors when we say we're doing this because we want to build deeper relationships with our clients, the community, because we think that's going to end up actually in a better deliverable in terms of what we know is our real purpose, which is building great plans and portfolios. But they're connected. I didn't see that. So I felt like it wasn't just the world didn't need another advisor or an advisory firm. What my little part of the world needed was someone who was going to come in with a different heart set and mindset for how it needed to be done. And so that's it. If you don't have a new chapter to add, and it might just be a little bit different, then don't do it, because it isn't that any one of us is so cool that the world just needs us, right? And that was big. In terms of, I think you're told so much as a young kid about how cool and big time and what a big world it is, and you're the small fish and all that stuff that they do to, I think, scare you into studying and doing your homework. It sticks with you on an innate level for a really, really long time. And so a little bit of that imposter syndrome, or am I real, or am I full of shit, I think is part of the fact that that's somewhere in your mind. Is like, well, when do the big kids show up? When do the big fish show up? I'm the little, and then you realize it's all the same fish. There's some people who get super rich or super famous. They make up 0.0 nothing of the world, number one. Number two, that's really not anybody's benchmark. The point is everybody's got an opportunity, whether they ever own their own business or not, to have significance to those around them. And that's never a comparative comment. That can just be. So,
love that. Well, we'll get a couple interesting questions. We'll get a little off the wall as we wrap it up.
Sure.
What are you not very good at?
Volleyball. That's the number one thing I suck most at. Followed, I'm horrible at the crawl stroke. I'd say as relates to this one.
What's the crawl stroke in volleyball?
No, swimming, crawl stroke, volleyball, two different things.
Okay.
So I took a swing for conditioning class, hardest thing I've ever done in my life. You literally just got to pull and swam for an hour. I'd have to go home and take a nap for like 3 hours just to be able to do my homework. This was in college. And I was only just doing the breaststroke, and the teacher's like, you need to do the crawl stroke. So she took me and tried to teach me. And I've been told subsequently by other people, you could learn, but I just kind of went through at an angle through the water. And she quit. She's the only time someone gave up on me. She's like, "You're right. You can't do it. Just go back to doing whatever." As pertains to the day job, I mean, there's a ton of things I'm not very good at or I'm not knowledgeable at. And I think, most importantly, we work really hard, and that's why we have this team concept as it stands here. or I trust my wife when it comes to the parenting of our kids. I think you need to stay in your lane and not pretend to do. There's a lot of people who pretend to do things they can't do. I never want to consciously do that. And eventually you get exposed. I think part of my ability to approach things with confidence is, for the most part, I'm trying to live that and be that. I think wrap up with this, though, as pertains to this company. I learned a big difference between being a manager and being a leader. And when you talk about being a CEO earlier, I think I'm a pretty good leader. I'm not a really great manager. And so I've had to learn some new skills. I can, inspire people. I think I can paint great visions and help people get to buy into those visions. I think those visions can have a lot of merit, but the getting the details down to a fine point where someone besides yourself understands what to put into motion. I didn't necessarily understand a few more of those steps. And so I've had to work hard at that, number one. Number two, understand that, much that team concept, I needed to rely on people around me who had more of those skills to help interpret and implement what I was wanting to do, and be humble enough to ask for their help.
I love it. Well, thanks for letting me turn the tables on you today and interview you this time and pulling back the curtain. We'll leave it there. So appreciate it.
All right. Thanks.